Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Voices from the Mausoleum. And today's episode is our last episode of the year, which is super exciting. 11 months of videos. Whew. And this is probably the hardest video I've had to do. So, here we go. I just decided to torture myself and decided that I would do a top 5 horror, my best horror films of the year that I've seen. And then the list making started, and I couldn't narrow it down to 5. I was like, oh, I'll do 5, and then I'll do honorable mentions. And then there were so many honorable mentions that now it's a list of 10. So, top 10 best horror movies of the year that I've seen. Some of them are shows I had to add. There was a couple, two shows I had to add. They deserve to be on this list, so they're on here. So let's jump into it. I'm going to go in order of from 10 down to my first choice. So, number 10, The Old Ways. So, why is this one on my list? The Old Ways is on my list because I'm a super big fan of possession movies, and I loved the new take on the possession movie. I loved that they took something really, typical that we've seen so many times, and that we've seen all the different outcomes. We've heard some of the different types of demons and all these things, and it totally took a complete unique turn. And it's not like any other possession movie that I've seen. I love the cultural aspects of The Old Ways. That was beautifully done. And everything about it was so good. I loved that it didn't show the demons too much. I loved that the horror was atmospheric, and it wasn't like it didn't have like a ton of jump scares. It just had these very well timed moments of discomfort with characters that you really become invested in, and it blew me away. It definitely set a new bar for possession films, as someone who loves them. So that one had to be on my list. That was a Netflix original too, by the way. So that had to be on my list. So that was my number 10. Number 9. I'm trying to think if I've done reviews for all of these. I think I have. I think all of the movies on the list and shows on the list got a 30-second review. They should have anyway. So my number 9 is a movie called The Stairs. So The Stairs is one that I went to. They did a special thing where it was only in certain theaters for one night, and that was it. It's a very indie film. It's based off of a collection of creepypastas, stories where people are out for various different reasons in the woods, and they're finding these staircases in the woods and the odd occurrences that kind of happen around that. The creepypasta for that, the original story for that is, I'll link it below, is really good. It's long, but it's really good. I may do that on my Spooky Saturday stuff coming up. I'll be doing an update video too for the first of the year about some changes that are coming. It's additional things. Nothing is changing about the normal stuff per se. It's just adding stuff to it. But okay, so why is The Stairs on my list? The Stairs is on my list because it was the director was a stunt guy. Like, he was more into he did a lot more action stuff, and didn't really have a lot of experience in the horror world. But you can't tell. The Staircase is a very fun ride. It's definitely a creature feature, which I didn't expect it to be. Honestly, I don't really know what I expected, because the stories on the creepypastas are so vastly different. They stretch across a couple different things. But something about this movie just really struck a chord with me. I think some of it has to do with the family elements, and I kind of like, and this has been done before, so it's not like 100% original, but where something bad happens to someone at some point earlier on in the film or the show, and then that person comes back, but no time has passed for them, but it has for other people. and I really liked that a lot. I think the creature stuff was really well done. There were these characters in the woods that were very like, I don't know, like they just gave you the Wiggins. Like they were really well done. The acting was really good. The effects for the gore and stuff were really well done. And I wouldn't call this subtle horror. It's not a subtle horror film, and it certainly is not a slow burn by any means. You kind of jump right into things. I think the only thing it was missing to have maybe been a little higher on my list is I would have liked to have learned a little bit more about the premise, like for it to have had like a little bit of background, a little bit of lore. Um, but I guess in some ways it's kind of good that it didn't because there's a lot of mystery around it, and that's part of the discomfort. That's part of the like, okay, so like these could be anywhere. Who knows how many times these stairs have made people go missing? What's happened to them? Kind of just adds, I guess, like the overall effect of the movie. But overall, it was really, really, really well done, and I really liked it a lot. And it's one that even though I saw it several months back, I still think about it, and I really like it a lot. I think the director did a really great job. I love the influences coming from creepypasta. That always makes me happy. So that is my number 9. Number 8, good TV show, Netflix original, brand new cherry flavor. This is a wild one. So if you've been following along, I'm a huge fan of anything that is witchy, like witchy, dark, occult, even just normal cult vibes. Like all of that stuff is speaks to me. Like I really like it a lot, and this is definitely a witchy show. And I think as far as why it's on my list is so I have a really hard time with horror that is um just trying to be weird for the sake of being weird, or it is, gonna go for shock value, but the shock value has no purpose. This movie is so far out there, and yet every single moment of its insanity has a point that it is trying to communicate. And I think that because they did such a great job communicating that effectively, it sticks with you. There's some scenes that are very odd, very weird, pushing, the envelope for your comfort and what you're used to seeing in horror movies. And I think I love it because even when you read the synopsis about it, or even when you get a couple episodes in, you still have no idea what you're in for because the moment that you get comfortable with the concept, something else is happening. And it was just so well done. Catherine Keener is in it. I love her. And she plays this witchy role. I mean, like so well. Like it's untouchable. It was so good. And I loved that it had a lot of different elements. It had some relationship stuff. It had some Hollywood abuse stuff. It had, kind of a deal with the devil sort of backstory, and then I think even learning more about the background of the characters. I don't know, like it just was really, really well done. And I think a big reason I liked it is because it is so weird, but it made sense for it to be weird. It wasn't just weird for the sake of being weird. It had a very unique story to tell, and it did a really great job of telling it. So, brand new cherry flavor is my number 8 for the year. Which number 7 is also a show. Number 7 is Midnight Mass, which is another Netflix original. I no, so Midnight Mass. Some people really couldn't get into it. A lot of people thought it was too slow, too boring. It is definitely slower burning storyline for sure. But once you reach like the third or fourth episode, it's like balls to the wall to the end. It's insane. Like it all of a sudden there's just like all this stuff that happens. And I said this in my 30-second review, but I'll say this again here. Midnight Mass is not a story about monsters. Midnight Mass is a story about humans, and that is what made it so good. And I also really love the correlation of the religious aspects of, the Catholic belief system and the things that they believe for Matt, like all of these like symbolic things that they do, and then connecting it to a vampire. Really smart and really impressive because it's interesting because I was reading an article about the kind of where some of the concepts came from, and One of the things that they said was, it's kind of crazy to think that those lines hadn't been connected before. The drinking of the blood, the eating of the flesh, like, so anyway, I thought that was really well done. And also, it's interesting because I found myself, watching it. The vampires weren't the scary parts for me. The scary parts were the religious people, the blind following, and the being willing to do anything because that's what you thought you were supposed to do. And I think that is far more terrifying than any vampire creature you could create. And the scary part for me is that a lot of that stuff is not far from reality. And not just obviously with the Catholic Church specifically, but I just mean in a cult mindset and extreme religious mindsets, like it can be very dangerous. And I think that this movie did such a great job of combining the two elements of the human pieces with the monster pieces and just making it this beautiful story about faith and loss and humanity and grief and guilt. And it covers so many things across the spectrum. But at its core, it is a movie about people. And God, some of the monologues and dialogues, I guess, but some of these conversations, the writing between the two characters talking in multiple different situations throughout the show is just stunning. It's beautifully done. If you haven't seen it, I do highly recommend Midnight Mass. I also think if you're not interested, if you got bored, I think you should revisit. But also, you need to see the last monologue before the films end. It is heart like it clenches in all the best ways. Like I was in tears. Like it was really beautiful, and the conversation changed, and I just, oh my God, I can't, like, I don't want to give too much away, but it was very beautifully done, and it was one that I was blown away by. I couldn't stop thinking about it after I saw it. So I definitely highly recommend that one as well. So Midnight Mass is my number 7 for the year. Number 6. I originally thought, putting this list together, that this would have been higher on the list than it was, but it was so hard. There was some really good stuff that came out this year in horror. And that's going to be Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It. I'm a huge fan of the Conjuring franchise. I have seen all but one of the movies. And the only reason I didn't see the one that I didn't see is it's the one that came after the first Annabelle movie, because I didn't like the first Annabelle movie. I loved Annabelle Comes Home. That was a really good one. I did not like The Nun either, but I liked all the other ones. And Conjuring 3 is on my list for a couple of reasons. I think one of the biggest ones is how vastly different it is from all of the other films in the franchise. James Wan wanted to take a more writing role, and he backed off. He wasn't as big a part of the directing, but one of the things that he said was he wanted to do something outside of the typical haunted house, haunted person sort of storyline, and I think he absolutely achieved that with Conjuring 3. The elements that are involved in the movie, as far as the storyline and why things happen when they happen, and it's all it's a pretty great story to get kind of immersed in. And I think another really big reason that I liked it so much is because they used a lot of practical effects for some of the more scenes, which I like. I prefer practical effects over the top CGI and computer animated stuff, and I just think it just looks so much better to me. And I think it takes longer, and sometimes it can even cost more money to do it that way. But I think a lot of times the payoff is massive. And there's a scene, and you can actually see the scene in the I think in the trailer. But there's a scene where the little boy at the beginning of the movie does this weird like flip up thing and stands up on a table. I was so sure that was CGI, and then I learned that it wasn't, and that was like a game changer. I was like, oh my God, that makes that scene so much crazier to me. That people can even move in ways that you wouldn't even suspect could even be done with practical effects. And I think, and I know a lot of people have said this. I've probably said this before. The Conjuring is not just a story about demons and fighting, and good versus evil. The Conjuring is a love story, and it's very much walks that line. When you see so much of the relationship between Ed and Lorraine, to know what what that is, like as far as how they were in real life, I can't help but feel like it's probably not accurate to the film, but I'm okay with that. The film is not, 100% accurate, right? So I'm fine with that. But they're so great together, and their on-set chemistry has never faltered, not once, in any of the films that they've been together, and I love it so much. Um, Patrick Wilson is in Vera Farmiga. I love them both as an actress and as an actor in general. But God, together they are just fire. Like they just work so well together. And I think that the scares and the atmosphere in this, I think it benefited from having someone else direct. I think that James Wan had a story he wanted to tell. He wanted to do something unique to what he's been doing in the horror world, and he decided to stick with the writing part, which it shows, and it's beautifully done. No complaints there. I don't think, thinking back on it, I don't think that there's anything I didn't like about The Conjuring 3. It was unsettling. It was effective. I was emotional. I am just so invested in Ed and Lorraine in general, I think. But even getting invested in Arnie Johnson and like wanting to believe, he really didn't mean to do what he did. It really was out of his control. And just all of those dark magic elements they added. And again, I love witchy stuff. So it was so up my alley. And God, the ending was so perfect and so cute. I loved it so much. There wasn't a single thing I didn't love about The Conjuring 3. So Conjuring 3 is my number 6. Which takes us to our final 5. So my number 5 is Willy's Wonderland. And I've said this before. I am so weird about comedic horror. Like it's such a hard balance, and I just don't feel like a lot of people really do it justice or do it correctly. But this one was perfect. Willy's Wonderland is Nick Cage, and it is a very FNAF Friday Five Nights at Freddy's kind of energy. It's like the Five Nights at Freddy's movie we've all been waiting on but can't seem to get. It was fun. It was gruesome. It had some tropes. It had some, some kind of new things going on. It had, I don't know, like it was just such a good movie. And when we watched it, I was just giddy. Like I was over the moon with it. I loved it so much. Still trying to find an original shirt that looks exactly like the one from the show. And I can't find one from the movie. I can't find one that looks exactly like it. One day I will have it. So if you know where one is, let me know. But yeah, so Willy's Wonderland. Why is it on my list? It's on my list because I love Five Nights at Freddy's, and I've always thought, as a child, as an adult, as a teen, I always thought that people dressed up in those things were really creepy. And I remember the specific time that I went to Chuck E. Cheese, and I was, I don't know, not too old to be running from a gray rat, maybe 12 or 13, and I had my nephew and I was holding him and we were playing a game, and it was at one of those points where Chuck E. Cheese is like out walking around and it's somebody in the suit, right? Not that the ones on stage are just as creepy in my opinion, but I like to think they're stuck on the stage versus the guy that like walks around. So anyway, and he gets too close. I literally put my nephew down on the ground. Like I went away. Like it made me so uncomfortable. I hate those things. When I used to go skating when I was a teenager, they used to have the people come out like the dog costumes, and they would do like, no, absolutely, it's not cute. Stop doing that. It's creepy. So I kind of always had like a fear or like a discomfort around those sort of things. And I've always thought that the ones on stage always looked crazy. Like, would it be crazy if they just like came down and just killed everybody in this room right now? Like, no more pizza party for you, Johnny. Like, that would be crazy. And it was something that I had thought of way before, FNAF was even a thing. But anyway, so it was just something that like, I was like, this is terrifying. Like, it's so good. And I think that Nicolas Cage did such a great job. And one of the things that Rick said when we watched it was he was like, I just wish like he said something. So Nicolas Cage's character doesn't say a single word the entire film. He doesn't say a single word. He just makes like noises. Like like there's no words. And so, and I'm like, no, but like that's like the charm. It's like this dark, mysterious past, and like it's so perfect. I loved it. And I think all the characters were really cute too. It kind of had some of the tropes with the teenagers, like the couple that dies because they go off and have sex, and it's got that little nerdy guy. It's got the guy that's in love with the final girl, and it's got all these like really cute little things, but it's got some darker stuff in it too. But it was, all in all, it was a really fun horror movie. And I think that's why it stuck out to me so much this year, because I don't typically like those. I like the darker, heavier stuff. And so when I walked away from that movie, I just felt really energized and excited about it. I loved it so much. So Willy's Wonderland is my number 5 for the year. Okay, so number 4. It was really hard to know where to place this one because I love this one too. So my number 4 is Howling Village. Howling Village is it's not really found footage. It's essentially a very new spin on a creature feature, something that I did not see coming, something that I could not I just didn't expect this to happen. Is it a Korean or a Japanese? Hold on, let me look. I can't remember. I think it's Korean. So I was just having this conversation with somebody else about Korean horror and just like how mind blowing it all is. Howling Village. So here's the thing. This says that this came out in 2019. It was not available. I couldn't watch it until this year. So just in case anybody's going to be questioning me about that part. Let's see. It's Japanese. I'm sorry. It's a Japanese film. But I don't think we were able to watch it until 2021. So Howling Village. Why is Howling Village on my list? Howling Village is on my list. I'll put a link to my Facebook album with all of these 30-second reviews because I did a review on this one as well. Howling Village is on my list, so high on my list for a few reasons. One, because it's terrifying. Japanese and Korean filmmakers, when they do horror movies, they just push that bar, and they just are so much better at getting to me. I don't know. Like, a lot of it's because I think the visuals, the way they choose to present gore sequences, I don't know what it is. It's just a combination of those things, but it just makes you go, oh, so much more than the stuff that we make here in the States. And so, so Howling Village is one of the other reasons that it kind of really stuck out to me is I didn't know, you don't know until a lot later into the movie. Small spoiler, if you want to skip to the next movie, I'll put chapters below. Because it's too important to mention why it made it on my list that I can't just leave it off just because it's a spoiler. So it's a werewolf movie. It's a movie about werewolves and the mistreatment of this group of people that made them what they were. And I think, I didn't know it was a werewolf movie. I didn't know it was a creature feature. I thought it was like a haunted. I was thinking ghost spirits. I wasn't thinking like actual creatures. And so it's a very unique take on the werewolf, and the werewolf looks really unique as well. It's a very different, I don't know. I've seen a lot of werewolf stuff. I love werewolves. Werewolves are probably definitely up there as far as monsters that I like. I kind of separate cryptids from monsters, but really they can kind of be, kind of put in the same thing. But I think that this one, when I got to the point where I realized that these people were werewolves, I was like in it even more. Like I was already really liking it, but when I got to that point, I was like, I'm here for this. Like it was just such a great telling of a group of people and what happened to them leading to this cursed life and the things that happened, and it was just really good. And it was pretty scary. There were some really good sequences as well. I really loved Howling Village, so Howling Village is number 4 for my year. Which takes me to number 3. This one might make some people mad. That's okay. It's my list. My number 3 is Resident Evil: Welcome to Raccoon City. For so many reasons. So many reasons. Okay, so for starters, huge Resident Evil fan. I grew up around the games. Resident Evil, it was the first horror game that I ever technically played. Other than, I think the only other one that I played around the same time, I don't remember which one was first because I was young, was PlayStation had a game called D, which stood for Dracula. That game was terrifying, but so good. So good. Anyway, Resident Evil. And I followed all of the updates on the games as they put them back out. I've seen all of the movies. Like, I know a lot about the lore. Like, I'm invested in Resident Evil as a franchise. And I remember, I loved the originals, the ones with Mia Jovovich, and I loved those. My problem with those was they were kind of their own entity. They didn't. There's some stuff where they're like, obviously, it's a Resident Evil film, right? It's the T virus. We've got the dogs. We've got the Nemesis program. We've got like all these things. And that's great, but it wasn't the Resident Evil that I knew. And I think that that's fine. I love them as movies. I've seen, I think, all of them except the last one because it just got bad, and I just couldn't sit through them anymore. But I remember always feeling like, we were missing a lot of the really good stuff. We were missing a lot of the really good characters. We were missing some of the story and the sequences that I would have really loved to see. The things that really made Resident Evil Resident Evil. And I think with this one, it's like, Capcom had that weird thing where they went back and forth about who they wanted to allow rights for the character names. And so it was like the movies were the first set of movies were just really chaotic. And it took a really long time for them to get anywhere close to the nostalgia that I felt within 5 minutes of Raccoon City. When I say that the sequences, like the scenes, the locations, like RPD, oh my God, the Spencer Mansion, like certain sequences that aren't in necessarily a location, but they're like parts that were, the scenes in the games. A lot of love and care and effort went into making those locations and those sequences look like they did in the game. And I love that they did that because as someone who is attached to the games, as far as them being meaningful to me, it wasn't just nostalgia for the sake of being nostalgia. It's like, no, this is the Resident Evil movie that I've been waiting for. This is the Resident Evil movie that those of us who have followed the games, who've played the games, that love the games and the story and the lore and the characters, this is the Resident Evil movie that we deserve. And I'm glad that we finally got it. I'm so pumped to see what they do with the next sequence or segment, whatever. I think that this movie, combining the first and the second game into one storyline, was very smart and surprisingly cohesive. I don't know, like I loved it. I love they kept the zombies old school, so they look like they did in the video game. They have the zombie doctor turning like this, which was like the first sequence in a game that ever made me turn a game off and go, nope, can't play that. And the dogs were great. The characters, oh my God, they were so good. And I think it just blew me away. I was like a child, like waiting to see Santa or something, like just sitting there, like shaking in my seats. I was so excited. And everything that happened, just everything was like over the top happy. Like it just made me so happy. And it was, it's so funny because a lot of people are mad that it was so nostalgia driven. It's like, okay, but y'all were mad when the other one didn't have any of the original stuff in it. So it's like, which is it? You either want it to be, it's based off a video game. Shouldn't it be like the damn video game? Just saying. Resident Evil is one I would gladly go pay to see again. Like, super loved it. So, yeah, that's why it's number 3 on my list. Yeah, and so that takes me into number 2. My number 2 for 2021 is Candyman. So I remember the first time I saw the original Candyman, I remember thinking it was very boring because I was too young to understand anything about what was going on in the actual film. Seeing it as an adult later in life, I have a very different perspective and a very big respect for the film and its storytelling capabilities. And I think the reason that this continuation by Jordan Peele and Nia DaCosta is that not only did it stick true to its roots as far as the time frame, very 90s horror, but it's interesting to consider how relevant the Candyman I guess, message or story is even in today's climate. Um, and it was a movie that left an impression. I sat through at the end of the credits they do these little these puppet sequences of these different things that have happened to different to black men and black children, and it's kind of showing what happens, all these different situations, and I um I left feeling very heavy and very sad, and it just hit me in a way that a lot of movies that have a message, a powerful message to offer, they just don't quite hit the mark like this did. And even aside from its statement, even aside from the emotional response that I had to this film, it was beautifully done. And it's for a lot of reasons. I think the biggest one is that it was very true to its roots. It felt like a Candyman movie, and I mean as far as the original. Um, the music in Candyman, the first one as well, is not as like so memorable. Like it's not something that you soon forget, and it creates such a response to the scenes. It's literally the music that you're hearing is what helps you get where you're supposed to get in your reactions to the scenes that you're seeing. And it was so beautifully done. And I think I also had this I just had this really great conversation with Rhonda Jackson Garcia. You'll get to see a conversation. My conversation with her will be released sometime in January. But Candyman was on her list of top influential films that have impacted her. And one of the things that she pointed out that really, I think, kind of elevated the concept of Candyman just a little bit for me. It's something I had not considered. Is this story of trying to put your creativity and your art in a box, an acceptable, presentation of what society or critics or whatever tell you that this is what you should be, this is how you should do these things. And you're limiting your creativity and you're limiting your muse and your inspiration for all these other things that you could go on to do. And that's a really powerful theme considering the premise of the film in general. I loved hearing and seeing Tony Todd again. Vanessa Williams, it was great seeing her back in the film as well. And I just think that overall, I just have a lot of respect and appreciation for the film for what it was for the genre. And I think after seeing Get Out, I think Jordan Peele, wasn't really anybody else that could have done it. Like these movies are opening up the genre to get rid of a lot of stereotypes and to kind of make a new path for a new type of horror from a different perspective that we weren't open to hearing before. And I love that about it. And by we, I do not mean me. And I think it was just a beautiful movie. And I didn't leave feeling scared. I left feeling sadness and overwhelmed and just heartbreaking. Like it was just a beautiful film, and they did such a great job with it. And I saw this, I think somebody tweeted this maybe. They were like, I will follow Nia DaCosta to the end of the earth. And I'm like, girl, me too. I'm right on that boat. Anything else she makes is a check and a checkmate. I will absolutely watch it. It was great. It was beautifully done. I loved it. So Candyman is my number 2. Which takes me to my number 1. I do a drum roll, but I'm not good at this. So here we are. My number 1 horror movie for 2021 is a movie called The Deep House. Now, I debated back and forth about this one a lot, you guys, because The Deep House, in essence, is not an original story. It's a very, a lot of people haven't heard of it. A lot of people haven't seen it. I had someone recently tell me that, just because of the trailer, it didn't look very intriguing, so they weren't interested. And then they watched it and loved it. And I think that it's a movie that okay. I'm trying to narrow down my thoughts on why it's my number 1. And I think it's my number 1 because of how different it is. It's a very different take on a found footage-esque film. because there are some shots that are not filmed from first person. But this whole concept of doing an entire horror movie underwater, not related to like sharks or creatures that live in the water, is is so good. And it was, I went on and on about this in my review too, because I was just so impressed by all of that. This movie is so uncomfortable. Like, aside from being underwater, like the sequences that happen as the boyfriend and the girlfriend are moving through the house and trying to get views, and they're taking pictures and they hear stuff and they see stuff, and it's just so well done. And I think Luther Cross said it best when we were talking about this the other day. He said that there was just something about watching someone walk underwater, like as if they were on land, like no gear, no nothing. Like, there's just something about that is so unnerving, and it lingers. And it's quite the effective horror movie. So I think it was hard for me to pick between Candyman being my number one and The Deep House being my number one, because Candyman is what it is for me because of how deep and meaningful it is in a social climate as far as its message and its meaning. And The Deep House didn't really have like a meaning other than to go to show you like what links people will go to for views. And so there's not really, so it's really more of, it was just a very effective horror movie. And I really liked the new spin on the found footage, like kind of the sort of subgenre of horror, as well as this whole, because this is kind of coming up a little bit more, influencer kind of horror. So even like in Howling Village, there's influencers that go to this village and they go take pictures and they're never heard from again, and it's like it's very normal for these influencers to kind of put themselves out there and be willing to do whatever it takes to get the shot, to get the photo, to get the views, to get the likes, whatever. And this took all of those very familiar things and made it really unfamiliar. And I think making it so new and different and unique in that way was what made it so effective. And I loved the ending. I won't do a spoiler for this one. I'll leave it for you to decide, because I think you should watch it if you haven't. But essentially, the ending is, I didn't, at first, when I first saw the ending, I was a little angry. And then I had time to really think about it. And because this movie sat with me for a while too. I was talking about it for a few days, thinking about it, mulling it over. And the general consensus that I came up with was that it ended the way it needed to end. And that was really well done. And it stuck, and it got beneath my skin, and it made me uncomfortable, and it made me feel all the things I think I was meant to feel. And that means that it did what it was supposed to do, right? So, so The Deep House is my number one for the year. Really close with Candyman. I'd almost put them both in the number one spot if I could. So those are my top 10 horror movies for 2021. I think we're trying to do this at the end of every year, because I'm here to stay. Yeah, so I think it's been a really good year for horror. I still have so many things to see. Demonic is on my list to see. I haven't seen that yet. Nightmare Alley comes out next week. That's on my list. There's a couple other really like big ones that a lot of people are really excited about that I haven't seen yet. I'm going to the theaters periodically, but I don't have the time to go to the theaters all the time to see all these movies. So I've only seen the big ones that I like was dying to see. And anyway, so that's my list for 2021. Thank you guys so much for an incredible first year on YouTube. I have been blown away by the support and the interactions and all the amazing people that I've met. And so I just wanted to make sure that I took a second and showed my gratitude, and I let you know that I really appreciate the support and the engagement and the honesty and the views and the shares and the retweets and the, it gave me a sense of community that I don't know I walked into this really expecting, which is even more fulfilling, like it makes me feel really good every day just to interact with these people and meeting new people and being exposed to so much more stuff than I was before. And I'm loving every second of it. Still working on keeping up with you readers, man. You guys read so much, and I wish I could. I'm getting better, getting better. So yeah, thank you so much for an amazing first year on YouTube. Mike and I are very humbled by the experience, and we really appreciate your support. So that's all I have for this one. I hope you guys have a phenomenal rest of your week. Enjoy your weekend. Happy fucking New Year. Be safe. Watch something scary and drink. Get a headache for the next day. Be responsible. Make good choices. That's what Bailey Searing says. Um, and we'll see you guys in the next year for our conversations with people about their top 5 influential horror. I don't say this a lot, but make sure you're subscribed and you hit the bell so that you can get notified when those videos come out. This is not a web series that you're going to want to miss. These conversations are phenomenal, and they're all very unique takes on various films, some of which I never even heard of. So you want to make sure that you're a part of this and be there. So